Welcome, guys, to How the Frack We Got Here, a show that takes the news and events of the week and try to make sense out of it all. I'm your host, the most Will Buchanan, and on this show, we simply are all about the facts. There are plenty of news stations out there that simply want to do anything short but inform you. Here at How the Frack We Got Here, that's all we believe in. We go up to the left, we go up to the right, we go up to the middle of independence, we go after all sides because there's more than one side of a story to everything, and you need to know it all in order to actually to actually formulate your own opinion, and that's what we try to do here at How the Frack We Got Here. Thanks for listening, and hold on, it's gonna be fun.
All right, guys. Today's date, March 23rd, 2022, and this is How the Frack We Got Here. I am your host, the most Will Buchanan. On the Frack We Got Here, we do take the events of the week and try to make sense of it all. Before we get started, guys, let you know that we are a family-friendly podcast. At least we try to be. So sometimes words do fly, as well as there may be things that might be shown that might be a wee bit graphic for younger viewers. So viewer discretion is advised. Aside from that, welcome. So how do we actually start this? Well, you would think on a day like this, we should be really talking about history. We should be talking about a momentous occasion in American history to where a Black female judge could make history by being the first appointed Black woman to the highest court in the land, the Supreme Court, be it that all Democrats decide to work together, but that's neither here nor there. But yes, we should be talking about how much of a historic moment this is. How many times has different presidents, whether Republican or Democrat, have tried to get a woman appointed to the Supreme Court? And now we have Ketanji Brown, who is looks like she's on her way. However, if anything has shown us in these Senate committee hearings is that, well, leave it to Republicans sit there and say we're going to have a somewhat normal court proceeding, considering the fact that they ramrod the last two Supreme Court picks in. But yet, I have to give it to the judge on this one because she was literally grace under pressure.
Jackson facing at times contentious questioning, vying to become the first Black woman on the nation's highest court, describing the kind of justice she would be.
My record demonstrates my impartiality.
Jackson was preemptively asked by Democrats about Republican accusations that she's soft on crime, noting her brother and uncles served in law enforcement.
I know what it's like to have loved ones who go off to protect and to serve, and the fear of not knowing whether or not they're going to come home again because of crime in the community.
And addressing criticism that her sentences in child pornography possession cases have been too lenient.
As a mother and a judge who has had to deal with these cases, I was thinking that nothing could be further from the truth.
Republican Ted Cruz then highlighted several cases where Jackson's sentences were shorter than prosecutors recommended.
Do you believe the voice of the children is heard when 100% of the time you're sentencing those in possession of child pornography to far below what the prosecutor's asking for?
Yes, Senator, I do. Judges don't just calculate the guidelines and stop. Judges have to take into account the personal circumstances of the defendant, because that's a requirement of Congress.
Retired federal judges from both parties say most federal judges in these cases sentence below the guidelines because they consider them out of date. Jackson was also pressed for her views on court packing, the idea promoted by some Democrats to change the balance of the Supreme Court by adding more justices, a move the late Ruth Bader Ginsburg and Stephen Breyer, who Jackson would replace, opposed.
Do you agree with Justice Breyer and Justice Ginsburg that court packing is a bad idea?
Well, respectfully, Senator, other nominees to the Supreme Court have responded as I will, which is that it is a policy question for Congress.
Jackson, who's received bipartisan praise for her experience as a federal public defender, today explaining her work defending Guantanamo Bay detainees.
That's what you do as a federal public defender. You are standing up for the constitutional value of representation.
Lindsey Graham using questions about Jackson's faith.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how faithful would you say you are in terms of religion?
Well, Senator, I am reluctant to talk about my faith in this way.
To blast Democrats' treatment of now Justice Amy Coney Barrett in 2020.
If a conservative woman wants to stand out and say, I love my family just as much as you love yours, and my faith means just as much to me as it does you, that all of a sudden there comes some kind of weirdo.
Jackson was also asked about her views on the Second Amendment.
The Supreme Court has established that the individual right to keep and bear arms is a fundamental right.
And on landmark abortion rights cases.
Roe and Casey are the settled law of the Supreme Court.
With her confirmation assured if Democrats stay united, reflecting on the historic nature of her nomination.
I have received so many notes and letters and photos from little girls around the country in that they have thought about the law in new ways because I am a woman, because I am a Black woman.
And Peter, this is just the start. Judge Jackson will face another round of questions tomorrow.
Yeah,
And which they are correct. Even now at the time of this podcast, she actually still is being questioned. But the one thing that it always kills me is that why do we even have politicians questioning judges for appointments? Because it's amazing that Republicans, keep in mind I talk about Republicans, they ramrodded two in there. Brett Kavanaugh, who I still believe to this day, we still say allegedly because, Trump made it to the point where FBI was handcuffed to where they could have investigated a claim that Brett Kavanaugh may have sexually assaulted a woman. As you can see, they kind of quietly contained that and swept it under the rug. But went ahead and confirmed him. Amy Coney Barrett, the weirdo religious person they talked about, they said the Democrats pretty much jumped on. Well, when you go forward and say that my faith will follow first and the law of the land will follow second, yeah, you should get questioned because are you really a judge or are you just really using your position to follow your faith? So yes, so I will defend that. Democrats had every right to go after Amy Coney Barrett, but again, Amy Coney Barrett was again appointed before Ruth Bader Ginsburg's body was even cold yet, and they ramrodded her in. So again, this is monumental. This is historical. Why? Because an African-American woman could be elected to the Supreme Court if Democrats stick together. Even more so to where, again, you have these Republicans that just ask these stupid-ass questions. And yes, I said stupid-ass questions because even Ted Cruz, somehow a person that went to Harvard, if you can believe it or not, decided to ask this dumbass question to Judge Jackson.
Team Project is closely intertwined with a movement that is called critical race theory. Critical race theory, as you know, originated at your and my alma mater at the Harvard Law School. In your understanding, what does critical race theory mean? What is it?
Senator, my understanding is that critical race theory is it is an academic theory that is about the ways in which race interacts with various institutions. It doesn't come up in my work as a judge. It's never something that I've studied or relied on, and it wouldn't be something that I would rely on if I was on the Supreme Court.
So critical race theory, as you know, has its origins in the critical legal studies movement, which also came from Harvard Law School, from a number of critical legal studies professors, crits as they were known when we were in law school, who are explicitly Marxists. And they find their origins in Marxism, although critical legal studies frames society as a fundamental battle between socioeconomic classes. Critical race theory frames all of society as a fundamental and intractable battle between the races. It views every conflict as a racial conflict. Do you think that's an accurate way of viewing society in the world we live in?
Senator, I don't think so, but I've never studied critical race theory and I've never used it. It doesn't come up in the work that I do as a judge.
So with respect, I find that a curious statement because you gave a speech in April of 2015 at the University of Chicago in which you described the job you do as a judge And you said sentencing is just plain interesting because it melds together myriad types of law, criminal law, and of course, constitutional law, critical race theory. So you described in a speech to a law school what you were doing as critical race theory. And so I guess I would ask, what did you mean by that when you gave that speech?
With respect, Senator, the quote that you are mentioning there was about sentencing policy. It was not about sentencing. I was talking about the policy determinations of bodies like the Sentencing Commission when they look at a laundry list of various academic subjects as they consider what the policy should be.
Okay, but you were vice chair of the Sentencing Commission, so let me ask again, what did you mean by, because that was an official responsibility of yours, what did you mean by what you were doing was critical race?
What I meant was that there are a number of, that slide does not show the entire laundry list of different academic disciplines that I said relate to sentencing policy, but none of that relates to what I do as a judge.
So what you're seeing there, ladies and gentlemen, aside from Ted Cruz somehow being admitted into Harvard Law School, if you can believe that or not, was that he tried to say, again, I hate to keep doing this, but there's no other way to say it. He tried, this is character assassination 101. See, this is what Republicans do. Actually, I should say this to anybody whenever a black person is trying to basically go for a position that they don't really want to see us in. Republicans don't. Republicans say what they want. Republicans are probably just emboldened about where they stand, because it's not about Judge Jackson's merits, which, by the way, if you look at her education, she's got more under her credits than the last two Supreme Court picks combined. She has more education experience under her belt than Brett Kavanaugh and Amy Coney Barrett combined. Even more so that it can almost be compared to President Obama as far as anything short of being a part of the president of the Harvard Law Review. So again, it amazes me that Judge Jackson has all the qualities in the world to be a Supreme Court justice, but Ted Cruz, in his usual slimy, backwards, idiotic way, is going to somehow instigate that Judge Jackson is for critical race theory, which we have said many times on this podcast. We've said it many times. It's not a movement. There's not a movement. There's nobody out there that is suggesting that critical race theory be taught in schools, even though several backwater Republican-controlled states have turned around and sit there and said, well, we're going to outlaw critical race theory being taught in schools. Even though there's not a record of it. There's not a record of critical race theory being taught anywhere short of law school. Unless your kid has somehow Doogie Howser, MD, their way through grade school and high school and found themselves in law school, is the only way they will ever come across what critical race theory really is. Even more so, they try to use a quote against her out of context. This is what they do, folks. And again, this is what happens when you have somebody who literally and figuratively is up for the job. When I say is up for the job, they are more than qualified. Even more so to where one of the Democrats, Cory Booker, wanted to give her a chance because she sat there and said something that, again, kind of struck a chord with me for a second.
For opening remarks that you haven't been as good of a parent, I think, if I'm paraphrasing right, as good as a mom as you'd like to be. And I looked at your two girls, and I look at you, and I don't understand that statement. Could you maybe explain for me what you meant, and maybe take one more beat and explain to me what it means to you to be a mom of two young women growing up in America today?
Thank you, Senator. What I said in my statement was that that I had struggled, like so many working moms, to juggle motherhood and career. And it takes a lot of hard work to become a judge, to do the work of a judge, which I've done now for almost 10 years. You have a lot of cases. You don't have all that many resources, comparatively speaking, and it's a lot of early mornings and late nights. And what that means is there will be hearings during your daughter's recitals. There'll be emergencies on birthdays that you have to handle. And I know so many young women in this country, especially who have small kids, who have these momentous events and have to make a choice. You talked about your mom making the choice to make sure that she cared for you in that moment. And there are times when obviously you have to care for your family members. There are other times when there are events that you wish you could be a part of, but here's the emergency case that you have to deal with. And so I said in my opening that girls, you've had to deal with me juggling motherhood and job responsibilities, and I didn't always get the balance right. And so I hope for them, seeing me, hopefully you all will confirm me, seeing me moved to the Supreme Court, that they can know that you don't have to be perfect in your career trajectory and you can still end up doing what you want to do, that you just have to understand that there are lots of responsibilities in the world and that you don't have to be a perfect mom, but if you do your best and you love your children, that things will turn out okay.
So again, guys, I'm not knocking that. It's a very profound statement. But I almost have to disagree with her. As a Black person, I have to disagree with her, because look at the society that we're in right now in America, that anybody else, you could be completely unqualified and still get a six-figure salary, while someone else could have multiple degrees and still be working entry-level position. There are folks out there that get loans for the dumbest ideas, that you can have the best thing smoking and everybody will deny you because they'll see you as a credit risk. I'm just going to be real. Black people get passed over all the time. And I'm not one to toot our own horn as our own people, but we are a talented bunch of people. We are a talented bunch of individuals that are incredible at almost everything we do. I have no problem bragging about that. The thing I will say differently, though, because like every Black person, including myself, myself included, how many times have we all heard this?
I told you you have to be what? You have to be what?
Twice.
What?
Twice as good.
Twice as good as them to get half what they have.
Yeah. How many times we all heard that? I know I did. I said, to me, it's one of those things to where, guys, that is something that's been embedded to us. Why? Because we're looked down. We are looked down upon. I mean, take, for instance, President Obama. How much this man have to do in his political career to be considered to be a presidential candidate? He had to be smarter. He had to have experience. He had to have charisma. He had to have leadership skills. He had to have everything and more. And the beauty part about it is, and the thing about it is, he damn near had to be perfect. Damn near. Michelle Obama, Dr. Michelle Obama herself, also had to be perfect. Because why? Because not only was he the first Black man to be as president, we had the first African American lady. You don't think there was immense pressure on both of them to not be perfect and then come back and still do the job because the guy after him was fucking up? They have to be perfect. Almost in every aspect, every successful Black person to get to where they need to be had to be perfect. It wasn't the fact that they were messy. It wasn't the fact that they were lacking. It wasn't the fact that they were unprepared. They had to be perfect. It's immense pressure for them to succeed in areas to where other people are not under the same pressure as we are. And nothing more. And like I said, as a black person, anytime you ever hear do it for the culture, do it for your people, if that is not the quintessential pressure cooker, because you have people looking at you, people rooting for you, people wanting for you to get ahead, that's pressure, dude. That is pressure beyond measure. And now Judge Jackson, again, perception is reality. Because I keep on saying it best. For some black girls, when they saw Michelle Obama, they saw where they could succeed. They saw Serena Williams, they saw where they could succeed. They saw Wilma Rudolph, they saw where they could succeed. They saw Jackie Joyner-Kersee, they saw where she could see. They saw Dominique Dawes, Madam C.J. Walker. They saw so many black, not just historical black people, but even current black people. You see Jay-Z, you see Nas, you see Rick Ross, even Shaq, or as he's now known as Dr. O'Neal. You see a lot of very influential black people that have made it. And I will tell you now, name me, and I put this out there as this podcast is going out there. Name me one person who lucked up on success the way George Bush did as being president. And his son. Name me one black person. Name me one black person that lucked upon success. Name me one black person that didn't have to be perfect to get to where he is. Because, again, with Judge Kajani Jackson, it's like Johnny Brown Jackson. It's just, yeah. I mean, she wants to say that you don't have to be perfect, but look what she had to do to get there. I'm not knocking her. I'm rooting for her. I would like to finally see history be made and an African American woman be on the Supreme Court. I am rooting for her because she is more than qualified. Unfortunately, the idiots that questioned her during the Senate committee hearing, which was mostly Republicans, just showed why they should not be basically politicians. But let's be honest, when they're from the states that they're in, they're going to get voted for. But that being said, Judge Jackson had to be perfect, because if she was mediocre, she wouldn't be considered. And it is a sad state to say that in, but it's true, not just for the honorable judge, but for any black person that's trying to rise above higher than the stereotype that they already have us pinned in. We have to be perfect. And yeah, does it suck? Yes. But the only way that changes is that we have to, it's like we as a people can only change the culture, and the culture follows. Because if you don't think the black person is the most followed and imitated trendsetter in the entire world, you are completely blind. But that being said, we are still going to root for her as far as confirmation hearings go. And like I said, if all Democrats seem to stick together, then we should have our historical moment in history to where we can honestly sit there and say that, yes, we saw a black woman rise to the highest court of the land as a Supreme Court judge. And I will not complain. But even more so, it's just amazing to me. Like I said before, I get the story. I get what you're trying to tell our daughters, that you don't have to be perfect. But let's be honest. I mean, take away from Scandal, say what you want. Scandal may be scripted, but that was the truest minute and a half in television history. Well, top 10 at least. But moving right along, guys, I did want to cover this as well, because a lot of talk has been going out about transgender sports, specifically, dealing with the NCAA championships, things of that nature. However, there has been some news on the political side. I am talking about GOP governors, if you can believe it or not. Republican governors are vetoing anti-trans sports bills in Utah and Indiana. Now, it's weird. I know conservatives who are in the highest offices in their state are basically vetoing bills that have been passed in their state's legislature. But some of them actually have pretty good reasons. The governor in Indiana, for all of his athletes that are in Indiana, only 4% of them, or only 4 of them, are transgender. It would make no point for him to put in a ban that's only going to affect 4 people. It's going to like discrimination. Indiana, same way. For Indiana, it's all about for the governor of Indiana, he's pretty much saying he just wants them to live ordinary lives. So again, when it comes down to this, yes, it'll go back to their state legislatures, and yes, based on their state laws, if they do vote, those things can be overturned and be made into law anyway. But I point this out. For the simple fact of the matter, guys. It's just that I never saw the point. I even said them off on this podcast. You know what's going to wind up happening? That intergender sports is going to become a thing. Intergender, if I can pronounce that word correctly, that's going to happen. It really is. Now, whether people like it or not, it's going to happen because I gave two possibilities of how this could wind up. Say, for instance, conservatives and repressed religious people had their way and said, no, trans athletes cannot play on the gender they identify with. It must be the gender they're born with, or they can have their own league. Okay, cool. So let's just say they go with their own league. Let's say every school system in every state decided to open up a separate league for transgenders. So now you have transgenders that identify as either man, woman, or they, or non-binary. Let's just say the league exists, right? Let's say those leagues are filled up and they still play other sports with other transgender leagues across the states. So now you have 3 leagues: men, boys, girls, and transgenders. Now keep in mind, for those that wish for their children to go to that next level and go to college play, NCAA does not discriminate at all. They actually stand with the LGBTQ plus communities on this. So now what you've just done, now the NCAA is going to scout the transgender league, and they will still offer, and the thing that'll happen is they will still offer those scholarships. Those schools will that scout them can offer scholarships and opportunities to those transgender leagues, which will take away from the boys and from the hetero boys and girls leagues of the same school system. So what happens there? Well, I'll tell you what happens. Folks will still complain. The same parent who thinks that their child should have got a scholarship, but he was too busy looking at the 6'7" transgender that's playing for women because that's how he identifies, and just now got a full ride to UConn. They're going to complain that, hey, you should have looked at my boy instead of looking at that thing over there. Folks will still complain regardless. So again, even if you did that and still had transgender league, there will still be those on the repressed side. Now I say repressed, I mean stupid. On the stupid side, they'll sit there and say, "Hey, well, this shouldn't happen because they should play they should play however they should play according to how we feel comfortable." Which I find amazing that you cannot acknowledge that another person wants to be identified a certain way, but you want that person to play to where you feel comfortable about it. Kind of odd if you ask me, but the thing about it is, if they don't do that, then intergender sports is going to happen. And I've always said it best. We do that in intramurals anyway, from the YMCA to college. Intramural sports work because men and women still play together in sports. Why not just go ahead and do the full Monty? It's going to happen anyway. And I say it's inevitable because that is the only solution. The only solution that solves everything is make it true equality. Well, men and women, women will be able to overpower men because they're physically stronger, and women won't be able to compete with men. Well, you want equality. Everybody's on an equal playing field. What's the problem? The only problem is it's going to make a lot of people uncomfortable. That's what the true part of it all is. The people like that who believe that trans athletes should not compete with who they identify with will always sit there and say, well, it's just not right. They're cheating. No. Once we open the door to accepting others on how they believe they should be, that once we open that door, everything comes with it. And I, for one, don't have a problem with it. I mean, for the simple fact of the matter, you can't talk about the purity of sports. You can't talk about the fact that college athletes get screwed over while universities make billions of dollars. You can't talk about the fact that, for the simple fact of the matter is that college athletes can't take any money. It was a rule. College athletes couldn't even take a single sandwich without violating NCAA rules. But colleges can make billions of dollars off of them. You talk about baseball, professional sports, especially baseball, the integrity of the game, and how many guys were on performance-enhancing drugs at the time? Even still gambling? Football, same way. Domestic abusers got a pass. You want the NFL to do more to Ray Lewis than the police did. But you're going to complain, but your line in the sand is that transgender athletes are cheating. Okay. All I can say is I digress. Moving right along, guys, I did want to cover this story as well. That Starbucks, as you guys know, have a lot of cities have been organizing unions, even more so that workers at a Starbucks store in Seattle's hometown, which is the corporate location for Starbucks, has voted unanimously to be represented by a union. Now, this one store, which only has 13 employees, did vote, and it was a unanimous vote, which means that everybody was for it, which means that now the unionization for Starbucks is now approaching, before Tuesday, it was 5 stores near Buffalo, New York, and one in Mesa, Arizona. So now the union is now up to being about 149 stores spread across 27 states. Again, guys, I will keep saying this because it needs to be a thing. Unions work. And again, any corporation, now I keep saying this all the time because I want people to understand this. Anytime that corporations say you don't need a union, number one, run. Number two, anytime a corporation says we don't need a union, we're like a family, run. Run fast, run far. Because trust me, they are not. I can tell you from personal experience, anytime you hear a corporation say stuff like that, you need to run. Don't think about it. Treat it like a horror movie. Treat it like a horror movie, except don't fall over any other man under any imaginary branches. That's all I'm saying. But unions do work, and corporations hate unions because corporations hate accountability. Corporations love profit. They hate accountability. They hate the fact that when you're churning out workers like a meat grinder, when your turnover rate is atrocious, but your profits are up, profit sharing people are happy, you are making massive moolah in a pandemic situation, but your workers are underpaid, tired, burned out, and more than likely, all you're doing is sitting there saying, there's more of you out there. You're a meat grinder. You're not a loving family. You're a meat grinder for people. So again, I'm happy with the fact that Starbucks, Starbucks stores are unionized, and Starbucks is sitting there going, oh, that's nice. I mean, they don't have to, but they're welcome to. Goes to show you off the bat, you have more power in a union than you know. And the many stories we covered about unions over this last year or so with Kellogg's, with John Deere, and Pennsylvania Steelworkers should tell you everything you want to know. Unions do work. At the same time, don't be afraid to start a union or join a union in your local area. I highly recommend it. But speaking of corporations and accountability, Disney in Florida kind of has a problem on their hands, mainly put because of Trump's puppet, Governor Ron DeSantis, and his parents' equal rights bill, otherwise known as the Don't Say Gay bill. Well, Disney CEO Bob Iger is a little bit of trouble because, well, he was a little slow to say anything on it. And we know in this day and age, image is everything.
There is no way to dodge political footballs in the United States. You end up just getting bruised if you try. Disney CEO Bob Chapek learned that the hard way this week. It took the better part of a week for Chapek to come to the side of his employees to speak out against Florida's controversial and so-called Don't Say Gay bill. Chapek started the week by deciding not to directly condemn the legislation that will ban discussions about sexual orientation and gender identity in Florida classrooms among young children. By Wednesday, Chapek did start to speak out more directly against the legislation. He acknowledged his original statement did not meet the mark, but he continued to face backlash from employees. And finally, on Friday, here's the apology he issued to his employees, saying he believes we are an infinitely better and stronger company because of our LGBTQ plus community. I missed the mark, he said, but I'm an ally you can count on, and I'll be an outspoken champion in the future. So Chapek completely botched this throughout the week and then eventually conceded to his employees. Deadline this weekend calling it Chapek's biggest, toughest test yet, running one of the world's biggest media companies. We're going to go to Florida and speak with NPR TV critic Eric Deggans about this in a moment. But first, veteran TV executive Garth Ancier is here. He's a former president of Walt Disney Television. Garth, you wrote on Facebook about this a couple of days ago saying, you were an openly gay executive at Disney decades ago. The company was obviously known then and now as clearly gay-friendly. Lots of people working in theme parks and animation and films and movies and TV and all the rest of it. So was Bob Chapek so out of touch with his employee base that he decided he was going to try to avoid this controversy in Florida until he had to give in and speak out against it?
I think he was trying to avoid it. The problem is that Disney is much more of a moral guardian company than most. It's a very special position that Bob Chapek is in. And his two immediate and prominent predecessors, Bob Iger and Michael Eisner, have both been at the forefront of protecting their employees and doing being moral clarions. In this case, it's sort of compounded by the fact that, one, he didn't react quickly enough, and secondly, now, Walt Disney Company is the largest employer in Florida. So they have more employees than the public supermarkets. So it's not surprising that he had to walk this all back. I just wondered how he got this wrong in the first place.
Well, he got it wrong just because, again, there's only two ways a corporate, like you said, was right. When it comes to corporations, they do try to avoid political situations. However, this was not political. Keep in mind, we did cover Ron DeSantis's parents' equal rights bill, because the fact of the matter is, everybody had a problem with, again, the third issue, that when it comes to grades, kindergarten through third grade, that no talk of sexual education or things of gender shall not be discussed in classrooms. Now, that's all well and great unless you're married, unless you're in a family where you have two dads or two moms or two transgenders or two binaries or two non-binaries. It's hard to actually have those discussions, especially when teachers are hamstringed. Now, you would think, since Disney is all inclusive, that hey, we stand for this, instead of having the massive walkout that they're actually about to be enduring very soon. This is the problem with corporations and CEOs. You either are too slow to act or not act at all, which can be just as bad as agreeing with said statement. Now, do I think the current CEO for Disney is slow walking this? Yes. It's damage control at its finest, because he should have sat there and said, well, you can't sit there and say you're an ally, but it took you nearly over a week or so to respond to the Don't Say Gay bill. It took you over a week or so to respond. Why? Because you looked at the fallout. You listen, because let's kind of be honest here, guys. There are people out there that look at the fallout and sit there and say, well, if we side with this, we may take a hit. Well, if we don't say anything, then it may not be as bad. But if we put our heads in the sand, maybe we won't get any blowback at all. They have meetings on this. Corporations and managements in these corporations have meetings on this. They have their risk assessments where they say, if we take this, this is what's going to happen. And somebody, I guess, who got paid a boatload of cash for saying something stupid said, maybe we shouldn't talk about this. But considering the fact that if you have a bunch of workers under the LGBTQ flag working for you and you're staying silent, not a good look for you, sir. Even more so that he says, I missed the mark. No, you didn't miss the mark. You literally tried to be silent, and then it came back to bite you in the ass. And so now you're walking back your comments. Oh, well, I will always be an ally. No, you won't, because Disney cannot afford to have a walkout. Now, keep in mind, I've been to Disneyland since I was 5, and that's been almost 30 plus years ago. Things may have changed here. Things may have changed down there in the Magical Kingdom, but I do know one thing. It is hard to get a ride on Dumbo if there's nobody there to operate it. At the same time, it's hard to run the Epcot Center with just 10 people. I'm fairly certain of that. But this is why he is doing damage control right now, because Disney cannot afford a walkout, not afford losses in the millions for a single day of operation. They're not about to take that risk. So now he's got to walk back his comments. See what I meant earlier about corporations' accountability? They always seem to miss each other like two strangers in the night. Now, the next story I got, guys, again, is a weird one because, this is almost conspiracy theory, but honestly, this is a conspiracy theory that's actually true, that the NYPD is actually collecting people's data, and I say data, I mean their DNA, really without their consent.
Class action lawsuit accuses the NYPD of secretly collecting genetic material from thousands of New Yorkers and storing it indefinitely in a rogue DNA database. In the suit, the Legal Aid Society says police gather DNA from a drink, a cigarette, or gum they offer people being questioned about a crime. They say those DNA profiles are then compared against past and future crime scene DNA evidence without a court order or warrant. In a statement, the NYPD says DNA is collected to legally identify the correct perpetrator, build the strongest case possible for investigators and prosecutors, and bring closure to the victims and their families.
So let's think about this for a second. So almost every cop show that we've ever watched, where they hand the person, would you like some water? Would you like some food? Would you like a cigarette? The fact that now in New York that someone out there is doing that, isn't that just a little bit creepy? At the same time, it's getting your DNA without your consent. Now, of course, I'm very curious about that story because the fact of the matter is that they actually do that to people and collect their DNA. It's almost like you would have to think there's something illegal about this. When, as I looked at this at the time of the recording, there was no legal precedent as far as them collecting without the user's consent. Now, I could be completely wrong about that. There was nothing I could really find under New York law that says that they couldn't. Now, that can be clarified as the case goes on. But imagine, if you're ever in a police. But I will say this. I now understand those TikTok videos where it looks like the guys in the interrogation room, they're about to offer him some water, and the lawyer comes out of nowhere and says, does kind of like the Timbe Mutombo, not in my house, that kind of thing. I understand why now. But it's crazy to think that they will use your DNA and store it on file. It's like the ancestry DNA that you did not ask for, nor did you ask to pay for. I just thought that was crazy. Even what more is crazy, because guys, remember what I sat there and said? Remember what I honestly sat there and said about, people worried about CRT influencing their children and things of that nature, saying, we don't want this, we don't want this in here. We don't want our children feeling guilty about their ancestors. Yeah. I wonder if those same people feel this way about this teacher.
In Norco, after a preschool teacher enlisted their kids to make a video denouncing President Biden. Inland Empire Bureau Chief Robert McMillan spoke with one mom who removed her child from that school.
She's loved it. She begs to stay late.
Christina McFadden says her 5-year-old daughter has loved her time at Turning Point Christian School in Norco.
She loved it. She's very social. She loves being around kids.
And the teachers?
The teachers, I have no problems with them. I didn't see anything happening that caught my attention or made me concerned.
That is until last month, when the preschoolers were learning about President's Day, and one of the teachers sent this video to all the parents.
Who's our president? What do we want to do with him? What?
I just was in shock. I mean, I had to watch it multiple times to realize, is this really happening? The first thing she said to me when I picked her up was, we want him out. Like, that was the great message she learned that day. It was her first history lesson.
3 hours later, the video was removed, and in its place, a message from the school saying the video did not share our school and church philosophy of honoring and respecting authority, including those in government positions. School officials have not responded to our request for comment.
I've always believed that the role of teachers is not to indoctrinate students about what to think, it's to help develop critical thinking skills so students can make their own decisions.
But Dr. Tyrone Howard, a professor of education at UCLA, says when it comes to private schools, there's not much parents can do about it.
Now, I know private schools operate under a different set of guidelines and procedures, but I don't know that even in the private domain that those leadership officials would want teachers telling their students what to think about a particular political figure.
McFadden has taken her daughter out of Turning Point Christian School. She says she wonders if the teacher was brazen enough to send something like this to all the parents.
Who's our president? What do we want to do with him?
What else was her daughter learning about that day?
Doesn't matter at this point which side of the fence you're on. This can happen in your child's classroom, and it is happening.
It's unclear what, if any, disciplinary action was taken against the teacher.
I'm going to guess none. And again, this is why I go back to say, like, they don't want critical race theory being discussed in schools. Well, no worry, it's not going to be, but that is. And I know some people can sit there and go, well, it's a Christian private school. They're always a little wonky. Trust me, I know. I trust. There's a few private Christian schools here in Tennessee where I don't even want to think about what they teach kids, especially Bible time. I've never heard of a Christian school where people where parents pay tuition for your child to read the Bible. The same thing they can do at home, but you're paying a school to teach your kid about the Bible and they should be giving them a first class education. I digress. But the thing that kills me about that is just that teacher may not be that teacher, because it's a private school, that teacher may not get anything short of a slap on the wrist. But that's why they talk about indoctrination. And the professor is right. Teachers are there to actually help develop critical thinking skills in these children to help them become better, efficient adults. That's what school is for. I mean, I say it all the time. I have a very big soft spot for educators, because educators are supposed to help you develop critical thinking skills. They're supposed to help you do logical progression. They're supposed to help you really look at the world to where you can solve the problems and be able to just be an effective member of society. That's what you're supposed to be. Although in these day and age, I could argue that public school has nothing become more than a common core BS BS way of actually passing kids, because that stupid No Child Left Behind law. At the same time, producing a whole bunch of kids that don't really think, but would rather be able to just be able to stamp on a button and say that's real crunchy. That's it. But going away from that part right there is what bothers me. Is that now she's right. Her kid came home saying we want him out. And kids are easily impressionable. We know, every parent knows that. But what's scary is that is exactly the kind of power an educator can wield, because they can shape the kid's minds, that in the same sense that they can tell a kid that all Black people are just lower than them, which again was also happening in the South. But like I said before, when it comes to private schools, not really a lot you can do in that situation except do what the parent did, is take your kid out. Because some fact of the matter is, now a generation, I'm hoping those kids that have been saying that and their parents will wise up and hopefully straighten them out. Because again, a whole bunch of kids saying we want Biden out is not cute. That is pretty much raising the next level of ignorance in the new generation. But that being said, speaking of ignorance, I keep saying to you guys about these tech companies, between Tesla and Oracle. Now another one has jumped. Now another lawsuit has happened. This time at Google, where Black women are alleging that Google fosters a racist culture in the lawsuit that they do have with their attorney, Ben Crump, as you're currently seeing right there, where those women are actually basically filing a lawsuit saying that the Google culture is a racist culture in which they've been harassed, discriminated, and passed over. Now, where have you heard this? Harassed, discriminated, passed over, always associated with Black people. Again, this is the part that I'm trying to sit there and say, guys, that when you're trying to rise above your station, this is what happens. And of course, even an IT company, which you think like Google, owned by the Alphabet company, would be welcoming and all uncertain, as of right now, really showing their ass. But again, that is a new story that's come along, and we will follow it as it develops. But it is a class action lawsuit being filed against the company in this week, because again, these are companies out here that supposedly have great inclusions of all races. But yet, again, how many times have we sat there and seen Black people enter these areas and never get the respect, never get the accolades, never honestly get what everyone else gets, but yet we get discriminated upon? Why? But we'll follow that story as it comes along. So that being said, we're going to move over to our feel-good segment, because usually how the Frack we got here, we usually cover a lot of things that are doom and gloom, sometimes make you lose your faith in humanity. But hey, it is hump day, which tomorrow is Friday, which is Thursday, and we do want to leave you guys out on a good note, some positivity, something to make you feel better about life. And hopefully this is it, because like I said, I know it's for Black people, it's just something about, it is really and truly something about finally getting our accolades, finally getting our flowers, finally getting our acknowledgement, that it just makes you feel special. And this man has been waiting a very, very long time to get his.
A truly remarkable story this weekend. A 101-year-old man finally receiving his high school diploma. ABC's Zachary Keish has the story.
This morning, there's a new high school graduate with a little bit more experience than all the others.
Presentation of the STORE Normal School Honorary Diploma to Mr. Merrill Hickman Cooper.
Mr. Merrill's high school education was cut short because his family couldn't afford his tuition. In a surprise ceremony in Jersey City, Cooper received that precious diploma at 101 years old.
I'll never forget this day.
Recognizing the void, after all these years, his family spent months coordinating with the school, now operated by the National Park Service. The son of a deeply separate and unequal America, despite the tough times, including lack of access to free education, Mr. Cooper carries the knowledge of our history.
My senior year in high school was one of the saddest times of my life.
But still, to this day, he has questions and heartbreak.
What was the reason that there was no high school for a black kid like me when I graduated from grammar school? What's the reason?
No struggle, no progress. Right?
No struggle, no progress. The heights of good and decent men are not attained by sudden flight, but they, while their companions slept, go toiling upward through the night. And he that is satisfied with what he has all that he can ever hope to have. I just kept plugging.
And despite the obstacles, he found professional success in Philadelphia, becoming the first black union president for Philly's SEPTA transit workers. He's seen so many things change, and at the same time says too much has remained the same, but he never saw this coming. Some 80 years later, the distinction he deserves, high school graduate.
Thank you so much.
We all felt that. I'm proud of you, black man. But the fact of the matter, that man finally got his accolades, but he still accomplished a lot without it. Says a lot of us about a people. Says a lot about us as a people. Especially that quote he gave at the end. I'm sorry, I did not mute myself. Sometimes you need a Sunday sermon on Wednesday. Sometimes you need it. I know I did, because if that was not the word I needed. But anyway, that being said, that's going to do it for this podcast, guys. So I do thank you all for watching, for liking, for sharing, for letting people know this is up and running. I certainly appreciate that. Before I do get out of here, I do got to do some shameless plugging as always. Let me first shout out the guys over at Geek Salad, R&G present Geek Salad, for allowing me to share my podcast on their page. Two guys I met last year that I will actually have back on the Get Bit podcast very soon. But you can definitely check out their Facebook as well as the YouTube page you're currently seeing right there. They do cover things of pop culture and definitely the world outside of it, through an unfiltered but a very intelligent way of open forum talking. And I definitely like talking to them guys, but definitely check them out on Facebook as well as YouTube, R&G present Geek Salad. Also, shout out to my boy Vaughn at BigVZA on all socials. They my voice put on Facebook, as he'll be coming back to podcasting very soon. Definitely check him out. Smoking Trailer Sundays every Sunday from 6:30 to 9 p.m. Of course, the REF podcast every Tuesday from 6:30 to 9 p.m. But definitely check him out on his socials, Avon Westman on Facebook and BigVZA on all socials. Now, as for yours truly, guys, of course, my IG handle, BlackBox447. You can definitely follow me there, as I usually post movie reviews, video game reviews, television reviews, and things of that nature. And also some gym stuff, because, I do a couple push-ups. Also, at the same time, I am all about positivity and moving things forward, because we have had a rough couple of years. And even more so, it's just the fact that, we get burned out, we get tired. It's difficult as all get out to really motivate yourself, to really get yourself back up to stuff. I get it and I understand it. And I hope to do so by, just posting inspirational, motivational quotes, really for myself, but I always want to do it for others, because when people see you doing something, it helps to instill it to them. And that could be the movement we can all get behind. So definitely like and follow me there. Of course, the ticker at the bottom, I'll blow it up a little bit bigger. If you copy and paste that into your browser, it'll actually take you to my link tree that has the Facebook and YouTube groups for all of my podcasts, How the Frack We Got Here, Get Bit, and of course the Optimus podcast. You can definitely like and follow and see every podcast I've done thus far from there. Really, guys, as much as you can do that, it's much appreciated, because as much as I would love to make this my full-time job, because this is part my mission, part my therapy, really just the part of the day that I just look forward to the most. But if you can definitely click on that link and let people know about it. If you like the way I do stuff, let me know. If you don't like the way I do stuff, still let me know. I still want to know exactly what you guys really do get from this. And like I said before, it's all about just making sure that I am giving you the news that you should be concerned about, with the perspective that will hopefully encourage you to go out there and find and do the actual research, not just look up stuff on Fox News or just from randomquacks.com. That's my hope. But before I do get out of here, guys, I do want to sit here and say that if you haven't already, please get vaccinated. Please get your shots, wear your mask. I know cases are going down. I know numbers are going down. I know that some places are starting to lift the mask requirement. Now is not the time to not take our foot off the gas. We've been here before, especially with variants that popped up and made cases spike back up. We have to be proactive and protective, and not only for the reason for giving our hospital brothers and sisters a break, we also need to make sure that people who get life-saving treatment from hospitals are able to go. I'm talking about those with kidney dialysis, those that need blood transfusions, and those that might need diabetic needs, and many other things. Their appointments get pushed back because COVID beds are taking up space. Once the number of COVID beds is reduced, those individuals can go in and get the life-saving treatment they need to still live happy, productive lives. So let's all do our part. Of course, I always say before, guys, please be kind. It takes zero energy to be nice. It takes everything in you to be a dick. At the same time, if you have the ability to make somebody's life great, whether it's a minute, day, an hour, or just really the lifetime, go ahead and do it. The world could use more random acts of kindness. Last thing to say about how the Frack got here, it's all about staying informed. We are not trying to reinvent the wheel. We are not trying to change minds. We are simply doing what the news stations will try to do. Give you all the information, allow you to be informed by yourself, but also provide a logical perspective right beside it. We do a lot better when we're informed. We're progressive. We move forward. We try to right the wrongs of our past by basically making decisions now that we should have done back then, like elect our first Madam Vice President who was Black, and hopefully our very first SCOTUS who is Black. Supreme Court Justice who is Black. When we don't learn from history, we are doomed to repeat it. That's why we keep asking ourselves why we find ourselves in the same rut. Why is everything going up but our paycheck? Why are we electing the same people but still getting the same results? And more importantly, how the Frack we got here. Thank you all for watching. And if you're watching some playback, please comment. I still want to know what you guys think about everything we covered. As far as that, take care of yourselves and each other, and we will all get through this.